David Tritsky for the Bond Experience. Welcome back. All right, I'm wearing the Turnbull and Asser shirt from The World Is Not Enough. It's the same exact shirt that you see him at the end of the movie when he dives, when he shoots Elektra. He does a lot of things in this shirt, is what I'm saying. I'm also wearing the watch from The World Is Not Enough that he also wears in Tomorrow Never Dies, the Omega watch that a lot of you have had, and boy, does he use it in a lot of different scenes. He's got gadgets galore. He's looking pretty badass diving, but there's the watch right there. Why am I all decked out? Why am I in front of my World Is Not Enough, not too creepy Pierce Brosnan head and all my accoutrements? It's because I'm here to talk about The World Is Not Enough. And why not? We are in the 25th anniversary year of The World Is Not Enough. But you would never know it. It almost seems like The World Is Not Enough in this anniversary year is a whisper. It's hardly even a glimmer. You hardly even have a glimmer. I can't do an impression of that guy, but you know what I'm talking about. And it seems a bit strange to me. And then I started asking around, as I do in the Bond community. Why aren't people celebrating The World Is Not Enough more? Why aren't we talking about it? Why aren't there events dedicated to it? And it was very interesting, the reaction that I received. Well, it's okay. It's sort of like, the quieter, forgotten Brosnan. And my mind is a bit blown. And this, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, boom, 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 is this thing on, is a defense for The World Is Not Enough. And now many of you are sitting back, rolling in your chair, arched eyebrow, and saying to yourself, David, World Is Not Enough. Twine does not need a defense. It doesn't need your little meager defense. It's a great film. And to those of you, I say thank you. You're already there. You don't even have to continue with this video, but I wish you would, because it is a celebration of everything of The World Is Not Enough. Now, I have to roll this back a little bit to tell you where this gray matter and mindset comes to of the appreciation of The World Is Not Enough to a time and a place of where I was in 1999 when it debuted. I was a young executive. I was just about at that point where I was looking at a bit of an emulation style icon. And what I mean by that is I think that every age, every generation has our style, or what I call emulation icons. These are people, real people, sometimes your family members, sometimes fathers, mothers, whatever it is that you look up to, that you sort of tweak your personality and build who you are around them. Sometimes it's fashion, and I did it a little bit of both. I looked at Pierce Brosnan's James Bond, and I'm like, hey, he walks a little cooler than me. He acts a little cooler. He's got these very glib remarks. Maybe I could be a sarcastic ass like him sometimes. And I sort of tweaked, I didn't have to tweak far, my personality a bit more towards that Bond, but I also used it as a style template. I wasn't dressing like I do now, where things fit right and look right and connect right, and I can actually put out a style and fit and fashion video and pass the blush test if I kind of know what I'm talking about. Back then, not so much. And the reason is that Twine comes sort of sandwiched in a very strange spot in the cadence of James Bond movies. Well, first we had GoldenEye with Pierce Brosnan. Everybody had the video game, right? We had that foundation. And so people loved the video game. If you love the video game, you love the movie. And it was a debut, the first of its kind like that with Pierce Brosnan. Appreciated today because of all those things. The World Is Not Enough is a resurgence film. What do I mean by that? This is a film that has gained an appreciation over time. It's sort of like Quantum of Solace, where, maybe it was okay for people back then, but now it's really fun, right? It's got all the tropes of a James Bond film. It's got incredible music by David Arnold. Everybody's flipping out over it again. It's had a rebirth. It's been reborn. And then you have the sandwich of kind of the soggy bread of Die Another Day. And Die Another Day has not gained an appreciation. We don't know if it ever will. Maybe, yeah, right? Hope springs eternal. But it's kind of a weird sandwich place, and that's why people feel it's this forgotten Brosnan film. But there's so much to remember and appreciate about it. First of all, we have to talk about James Bond himself. I'm going to start with him because To me, every Bond film has to revolve around shocking notice and news, James Bond. Brosnan was a more tenured, more seasoned, even a little bit of gray around the temples type Bond here. If this was his sophomore outing where he's kind of a cool and badass and he's getting his joking thing, this was his, wait for it, this was his From Russia with Love, which I know is the second movie, but just stay with me for a little bit. To me, this was Brosnan's playground to be a little bit more seasoned, a little bit more mature, to have an economy of movement and effect. And what I mean by that is where there was bombastic action in Tomorrow Never Dies that bolstered and buoyed the movie. In this one, this was Bond in being a thinking Bond, being a more spy versus assassin, less about explosions and more about how is Bond going to take his journey through this and really solve the issues. There was a challenge put before him. He saw the opportunity. He had a solution. He took it. Repeat if necessary. That's From Russia with Love. It's following the breadcrumbs of all the things and even having some twists and turns, which we'll get to as far as storyline and plot. But Brosnan in this case really serves that up perfectly well. I've always loved about Brosnan that I think he has the right mix. He has the class of Connery. He has that kind of cool panther-like movements that he has. This, and when I say economy of motion, it's not just economy of words, but even his slight little moments, his little hand gestures. Watch them the next time you watch this movie. They're slight. They're not this big, flowy David Zaritsky scrape at the camera type, Wolverine type movements. There are these little tiny subtle things of a man who has seen a few things. He's got some institutional knowledge. He's been around the block a little bit. And because of that, he doesn't need to be bombastic. He can just be present. There's many scenes in The World Is Not Enough where Bond is letting the world wrap around him, letting it wash over him, and he's taking it in and using that data to create insights, and he's using those insights to create action. He's not just whipping a gun, and Daniel Craig's Bond is great, but sometimes it's just raising the gun and firing. I mean, look at the end of Spectre when he's breaking out of Blofeld's lair. It's kind of video game-ish, you know. But in this film, there's a little bit more thinking and economy of action, and that's because of Brosnan. That is the way he serves it up with Michael Apted. The director and actor relationship seems incredibly solid here, and you feel it in the movie. You also feel it in the performance. Where Brosnan really shines in this as well is his performance against the other actors. Judi Dench, Electra, Renard. These discussions and monologues, and maybe this was the kind of the time around his Thomas Crown affair. So this was, to me, I'm just going to say it, and I love Brosnan even today, so take this with a grain of salt. This was Pinnacle Brosnan. This is when he was doing some of his best acting, where you could see little moments of Bond coming out in his filter, but he was channeling the best moments of Bond that we love. And because of that, I've got to give Brosnan's Bond in this probably some of his best acting marks of the entire Brosnan arc. That's right, I've said it. And you know my favorite Brosnan is Tomorrow Never Dies. Still is, even as I put out this defense. But from an acting standpoint, for being Bond in the way that I would want to be Bond, and I would want to see Bond in a movie today, this takes the cake. This is it. Because he's less action hero and more about solving situational, spy, intrigue, compelling us forward to be with him on his journey. And now we've got to talk about the Bond baddies. Because to me, and I've said this many, many times, a great Bond film has a great bad guy. I'm sorry. I mean, just, Silva from Skyfall is a great example. Goldfinger from the Titler, one is an HR issue, one's not. Titler. Bad guy from Goldfinger. He's amazing, right? He kind of, steals the show when he's on screen. Well, I'm going to defend Electra. A lot of people think that, it's by the numbers type situation. And by the way, some people say it's Renard, even to the poster. I mean, Renard's face is like Darth Vader. You know, it's like a big helmet of a head in the poster, whereas Elektra is looking like another Bond girl, you know, saddling up against Brosnan. But to me, the Bond baddie in The World Is Not Enough is Elektra, and I think she plays it very well. I think, even though to the audience, and certainly after many, many viewings of this, you know that she is truly the bad person, I think that there's enough of a twist and an aha moment in how she plays, how she manipulates. And this is why I think this film needs to be celebrated. The Bond baddie is not about just rockets or volcanoes or destroying the world. It's not just about that. It's about manipulation. And the best bad people in our world today are about manipulation. So the fact that Elektra is about manipulating, being on the side of good, allegedly, but then twisting things around and then using that for her own purpose. And the way she enacts revenge, almost like Bond would act revenge, but in a very diabolical manner, using people, using the ones closest to her. This is a psychological dream of a bad person. And I think she plays it off very well. The dispatch of her in the end is so shocking. Not just because Bond is killing a woman, Roger Moore, Moonraker. It's more than that. It's because it's so shocking because this incredibly capable and combatable type individual is dispatched quickly and without any aplomb. I said aplomb, look it up. To me, that is such a shocking moment that it leaves and resonates with you moments after it happens. You're sort of shocked, but it also paints a picture back to Bond. And the best Bond guys, Bond baddies, often create a reflection, a darkened shadow on James Bond. And this is a little bit philosophical, but stay with me on this. Elektra makes Bond be a better Bond. Makes him a darker Bond, makes him a more fallible anti-hero. The fact that she's shot point blank by him makes you go, whoa, okay, I was having fun with Pierce Brosnan's Bond and laughing. I'm not laughing so much, Mommy! It does. It makes you sit back and really think about this type of darkened character, what he's been through, and it adds dimension and complexity to his character. That, to me, is a definition of a great bad person that can actually be a deflector of who they are. And then, of course, Renard. Renard is, to me, he's the henchman. You could argue with me. I'm fine. I'm here for it. But it's okay for the henchman to last past the bad guy. That's happened in a lot of films where the henchman comes afterwards and tries to kill Bond. I mean, look at Nick Nack in The Man with the Golden Gun. Another anniversary film where he comes back in the end to try to get him after Scaramanga is dispatched. This happens. So Renard is a bit of the henchman. And by the way, there's lots of henchmen in this film. This is a henchman's convention. That's the other thing I like about it. You've got all these types of henchmen that kind of add up. You've got these nefarious people that are double entendres, and it serves up so much. And I like to have fun with my Bond films, sue me. But if you, like me, have a bingo card of James Bond moments and tropes when you're watching a Bond film, especially now that we've become, dare I say, Bond connoisseurs of the movies, you sort of look for these moments of love it, love it, love it, more of that, love of that, because as we're painting the picture of what Bond 26 could be, we have a wish list, right? It's a Christmas holiday wish list of different things that Bond can serve up. Bond henchmen, in all their mustache wavering type things, like when Bond goes to see Zukovsky. I mean, for goodness sake, Zukovsky's back, and he's got a caviar factory that is this great craziness that has explosions and fire and giant helicopters with bombastic, razor blades and saw blades on. It's insanity, and there's rockets coming out of the cars. This is pure bubblegum fun. And now I've just set up something that combats what I said earlier. I said this is the From Russia with Love. This is about spy and intrigue and storyline. But it is. But it still wants to have fun with the people watching it. It still thinks of the audience. And that's the other thing that I crave in a Bond film. Heck, I'm going to say any film, whether it's Star Wars or Mission Impossible, are the filmmakers doing this for the audience? And I feel like the world is not enough from a storyline, from the baddies, from the way Brosnan portrays James Bond. They're doing it entirely for the people that have their butts in seats. They're doing it for the Bond fans. And we feel it. We feel the joy of it. We feel the fun. We feel the intrigue. We feel the moments that you're supposed to be on the edge of your seat wondering, look, I know this is a Bond film and he's going to get out fine, but man, oh man, that is a desperate area. When Bond is sitting in that seat and she's turning the screw and he's choking, we're there with him. We're there with him. I mean, it's a little bit sensual, which that's another thing that it adds, is a lot of sensuality, both with the Bond baddies and also Bond. Bond crosses lines here. He's a little bit of a rogue. He's again, this kind of nefarious, shadows are supposed to be behind, not on top, right, situation, but no, he's on top of things, all right. Yeah, keeping the British end up, if you know what I mean. But in this film, it works seamlessly. And I think a part of why it works is the plot and storyline. And the plot and storyline in here are solid. It takes us for a ride. Now, let's talk about the plot a little bit, because some people ding even the pre-title sequence. How? Someone told me the other day, and you're like, David, it's the best. Someone told me the other day that it goes on for too long, that it should have stopped at one point and served it up. But this is about under-promising and over-delivering. When I think about anything in life that is worthwhile, including a movie, including the Bond producers at Eon saying, we've got to do one better than Tomorrow Never Dies, or the film before that, or Connery's films. Serving it up and having almost multiple pre-title sequences, including that amazing Q-boat, that's the screen right there from the Q-boat exchange, is perfect. It's fun, it's interesting, it sets up Bond's injury. It also connects to the story. It's not an irrelevant moment. It actually helps us paint the story of why Renaud saves Bond. The fact that he lets him in later on in the movie and says, in the pre-title sequence, he doesn't say it like that, but you know what I mean. I saved you, and I saved you for a reason. You're going to be my patsy. I'm going to use you like Elektra's using me, like Elektra's using this person, like Elektra's using her father. People are being used left and right, and the storyline weaves this so well. This is Pinnacle, Neil and Purvis and the other writers. Purvis and Wade. David, are we going to edit it? We're not. Because Brosnan's looking on and he's embarrassed for me too. But you know what I mean? I mean, the plot and the story weave together very well. If you have not watched, here I am, 18 minutes in and I'm making requests, calls to action, if you will. If you have not watched The World Is Not Enough in, I'm just going to say, a year or two, watch it again. Get a drink. Here's the move. Get a drink, get a snack. Bring a loved one in if you want, but fine to watch it by yourself too. Darken the room. Get it very quiet. Put your phone on Do Not Disturb and watch the film and watch the story wash over you. The pre-title sequence, how it opens up, how it pays it forward, how it introduces the characters like Q in a very fun moment, and yes, even R, but it also serves the storyline. It propels it forward. I'm going to be a bit controversial for a moment. Some Bond films that don't always weave a story together well are kind of like what I call Bond porn. Hear me out. What I mean by Bond porn is suturing scenes that don't really go together, but you threw them in there because maybe it's the right thing to do, or maybe you're trying to wow the audience, which is always a nice thing to do. But when you can wow the audience plus serve the story and serve the characters and serve the legacy of Bond, you have a winning formula. World is not enough, folks. Does it? Put it to the test. I promise you that. All right, so I made mention of, briefly, M and Q, Moneypenny, they're all served up here. What I like about them, and you could argue that M has a much bigger role, but what I like about them is one term, and it's a corporate term, so deal with it for a moment. Talent to task. There are Bond films out there that have what people call affectionately the Scooby Gang involved, that they are too much. They're too much of Bond's partners, and they take too much of the spotlight. They take too much screen time away from Bond and the story and the bad people, and that's what we really want to see. That's what we want to get. And the other supportive character should either create exposition, better storyline, better connectivity of the story, or support Bond. Give him the tools of the trade or propel him along in his journey. In this film, I think they have the balance correct. Now, M is a cornerstone because she's used. She's used by Elektra. She's played by Elektra. So she is a part of the foiling and a part of the plot. It's not there to serve up because, oh crap, we need another M moment. Somebody get the writer in here. We need another M. Yes, another M. No. It's part of the plot, part of the foiling. And she has her own emotional moments, but I think that adds some dimensionality and reality to it, which brings it back to my From Russia with Love example. That being said, whether it's Q or M or Moneypenny, are used with a certain amount of economy. They're not overdone. They also play to their part in the movie. They're not warrior. Moneypenny is not a warrior. She's a warrior. She worries about Bond, but she's not a warrior. She plays her role. All right. She is an admin. She's support. She's part of the intelligence machine. She plays that role. Q gives gadgets, gets mad at Bond, pushes him along, gives him a little bit of information. Same with here. Then you have ancillary characters like the doctor. Look at the X-ray over there. The shoulder X-ray. Serves it along, pushes it along, and that's exactly what it should do. And even though M has arguably one of her most profound performances, next to maybe Skyfall, I would say, it's used as a linchpin to the rest of the story. It doesn't exist by itself, and it allows Bond, here we go back to James Bond again, to be a better version of his character. There's something at stake here. There's somebody that's very close and very personal. And yet he's not going rogue. I mean, there's certain rogue moments in every modern Bond film. There's a little bit of like, he's going rogue. And I don't think we'll ever lose that. I mean, Bond's not supposed to be a conformist. He's supposed to do his own thing. I mean, he coerces the doctor in the most sensual way, as a good spy should. Spies use whatever tools at their trade, whether it's a gun, grenade, codes, or charm and sensuality. And it'd be tough to argue that Brosnan has buckets. I'm talking about fire brigade worth of charm, and a good-looking guy he is. I'm just going to say it. I'm pretty secure with myself. Yeah, no, I'm fine. So all of these things culminate together to a very robust film. And then, of course, you have what I call the pizza and bubblegum tropes of James Bond. Are they there? Are the gadgets there? Yes, they're there in droves. David Arnold music. Yes, and now he's got this kind of electric kind of mix. He himself is breaking through his bonds. Oh, look at that pun. Just sitting out there waiting to be had. He's breaking through his own bonds of musicality and performing something unique and different. And I'm just going to say Garbage's tune is not garbage. It's the opposite of garbage. It's beautiful. It smells great. I play it all the time. The world is not enough. Something I forgot the words I do not know. And you don't want me doing the rest. So it's a good thing I forgot the words. But it is great, and it's ballady, and it's very Bond. And Mea culpa, mea culpa. There are Bond songs, even some of the more modern ones, that do not really do it for us. They're the, fast forward, pass, no thank you, doesn't do it for me. Maybe I could learn to like it. The World Is Not Enough, when it came out of the gates, boom, my mind was blown. And so in this defense, I'm going to bookend this conversation because we could break this down for hours on every scene in every moment. But this is my sort of soapbox defense. So I'm going to bookend the conversation by bringing it back to where I was in 1999. Again, young executive, looking for style, personality icons to connect with, to understand myself, to grow with, etc. And I remember very well, quick little story, but I think you'll like it because, we're similar creatures, you and I. I don't know if you knew. I don't know if you want to admit it. There were a pair of Church's shoes that I desperately wanted from The World Is Not Enough. I had seen them before I saw the movie. And this was before any kind of like big marketing that goes on with like Crockett & Jones, etc. And I'd seen these shoes and they were beautiful. And I thought, my gosh, what a big investment. And it is, and it was. And I put it down and I plunked it down. And I remember being swept up in all of the marketing. This is where, if Tomorrow Never Dies is where it kind of re-sparked, re-energized my love of Bond. The World Is Not Enough catapulted me straight into the marketing and the productization of James Bond. I remember all the posters and the tchotchkes and the giveaways and all the little snafu type props that went over. And I remember being pulled into it, wanting a suit that looked like Brosnan's suit from the movie, looking at some of the things that he could wear, like the cufflinks and the shirts, and yes, the shoes. And to me, The World Is Not Enough allows us, the Bond fans, to create an immersive moment. That's what it did back in 1999. It said this Brosnan era is not a fluke. We're going to immerse you into the world of James Bond. So it's a culmination. It's a culmination of the portrayal of James Bond by Brosnan. It's a culmination of amazing bad people in the film, the foils, the conflict in the film. A great plot that is tethered together by both reality and the tropes we love as James Bond, the supportive characters that we know, the music, the song, and our appreciation of just going back to the basics of having fun with a James Bond movie. This pays in droves. So in this year, this 25th anniversary, what I'm going to ask as part of my defense is to raise a glass of champagne and toast this wonderful film and celebrate it and tell others to celebrate it. And let's spread the word. The World Is Not Enough. It's worth it. It really is worth it. All right. I'll leave you with that defense. I hope you enjoy it. There's my call to action. In the meantime, this has been David Zaritsky for the Bond Experience. We'll see you all real soon. Take care. Thanks for watching this episode. If you want to be up on the latest from the Bond Experience, just click on this subscribe and subscribe to our channel. You're going to get all the latest and greatest information, plus some exclusive content. And by the way, speaking of content, here's something especially for you, just because we know you. Talk to you soon.